This feels pretty good. Okay. Today, I just want to talk about some of the stuff that I've been loving so far in 2025, kind of just this first, half the season of the year. And usually I would do this kind of thing in a written post on my Substack, but this year I really want to do more video editing, and I figured what better way than to just turn this into a video kind of series. I'm gonna start with books. I only have 3 books to talk about so far this year, and the first one that I want to talk about, the first book that I read this year, is Sipsworth by Simon Van Buie. This was like a super cute book, like a very heartwarming fiction about an older woman living in kind of a small village in England. It kind of has like this nice rainy, wintry feel. And I read it because Hannah Paul, one of my favorite graphic designers that I follow on Instagram, she suggested it as like a book to read if you really wanted to cry your eyes out. And at the beginning of this year, I kind of felt like I needed that, but it is also like super simplistic, and I think it would be a great read for like maybe like a 10-year-old. And I don't mean that in like a super insulting way. I don't mean that this is like a super immature and bad book. The second book that I want to talk about is Daughter by Claudia Dey. This one I also just checked out from Libby, which I find really helps with getting me to actually finish a book in kind of a reasonable amount of time. Daughter I did really, really enjoy, kind of similar to Sipsworth. It also deals with themes of like maternity, parental relationships. It's about a young woman and her relationship with her father, which is a very toxic relationship. I think, especially if you have divorced parents, I think that this book kind of touches on some of that in a really unique way. And yeah, this book is also very, well, I would say Sipsworth, heartwarming. This is a very heartbreaking read, to the point where I was really expecting the ending to be a lot sadder or to be a lot less satisfactory. But I really did like the ending. I think I'm a person who likes a kind of non-ending, and I would say that this fits into that, but in a way that does kind of emotionally wrap up in a nice way. My favorite book so far this year was M Train by Patti Smith. I am a huge Patti Smith fan. I have been since I was very, very little, and I found out that, there were girl punk rockers. Patti Smith is like a huge influence on me, a huge inspiration to me. Man, this book is so good. I think it's, like a kind of essay memoir. Sort of the loose thread to it is talking about like coffee shops and places where she's gotten coffee in various locales, various countries. And I really love like a kind of travel log with like a specific kind of through line, or like a memoir with a specific conceit like that. And I will say that the coffee thing is it feels a little bit forced. It almost reminds me of David Byrne's Bicycle Diaries, where there's like this conceit of like, here's this thing, and this is how I'm approaching like this travel log. I would say even more than the coffee thread, there's this really powerful thread of her talking about her late husband, Fred Sonic Smith. She talks about his absence a lot, and she talks about it very beautifully. I think, if you're a person who believes in like soulmates and love in that, like this kind of ethereal fated love. I really felt that throughout the way that she talked about Fred, especially in how she talks about his absence. Like going through all these years and years of memories and talking about their children and talking about even her contemporary life and how she feels his absence in every day. I think that was really beautiful, and that did kind of feel like more of a through line of the book to me. But kind of no matter what the through line is, no matter like how I want to frame the book, however I would want to think about framing the book, it's just really well written, very beautiful. Yeah, it's a really interesting book of kind of transition and thinking about transition. Yeah. That's all for books. I'd say it's been a good book year so far. And yeah. I don't know that I'm always going to include both movies and TV, because I feel like I'm usually watching either one or the other. And this past 6 weeks has been a good example of that. We have not really watched very many movies, but we have kind of watched a lot of TV. So I only have 2 movies to talk about, and the first one is David Lynch's The Straight Story. If you're not familiar with this one, it is a Disney movie that he made. And yeah, we did watch this. We have the VHS, and we had been meaning to watch The Straight Story for a really long time. Especially, like, I would often be like, I just want to watch something nice. I want to watch something happy. I want to watch something that's going to make me feel good. And yeah, after David Lynch died, we were like, okay, now is the time we are watching this. And man, what a great watch for right after David Lynch died. It's a story of an old man who had like a falling out with his brother many years ago, and he, feeling that he's close to the end of his life, he really wants to resolve that. He wants to, rebuild that bridge. So he goes on a little journey to see his brother, and because he's very old, he can't drive. So he takes his tractor, his lawnmower. He takes his lawnmower, like, on the highways through, I believe he's in Kansas, and he takes a ride all the way to Wisconsin, or Nebraska. I believe he's in Nebraska, and he is trying to find his brother who's in, like, western Wisconsin. And yeah, it's like a really beautiful road movie, kind of Odyssey feeling, and it's a really beautiful story of, like, community coming around you, and the ways in which we can relate to our fellow man. And yeah, it's very beautiful. It's also based on a true story, which is really fun. And I think that something that comes across really well in this movie is almost like a blending of narrative and documentary style filmmaking. There are a lot of shots that kind of feel, a lot of shots and a lot of scenes that feel almost documentarian. Some of the side characters feel like somebody who's just been pulled in off, like, pulled in from the bar and told, like, hey, tell your story on camera and we'll shoot around it. I don't think that that's true, but there's clearly, like, a stylistic choice to kind of make it feel that way. And yeah, there's this one scene that I'm specifically thinking of in a bar where the old man gets to talking with another old man and talking about their experience in the war. For them, that was World War II. And yeah, it is one of the most heartbreaking and real scenes that I've ever seen put to film. And yeah, I really, really recommend this movie. I think that if you're a David Lynch fan, you're gonna love it. If you're not a David Lynch fan, this would probably be a great kind of introduction to him, because it's a very normal kind of movie. Obviously, Disney put it out, so there's not as much David Lynchy weirdness as usual, but I think that what he does really well is getting at the heart of something deeply American, whether that is like a deeply American pain, a deeply American weirdness, strangeness, a deep individuality and need to be alone. This movie contains all of that aspect of David Lynch. The only other like real movie that we've watched so far this year was the Tom Green documentary, which I really, really enjoyed the story of. I never knew, like Tom Green's whole story. I knew that he had like this kind of public access-y TV show that got picked up by MTV, and then that kind of like skyrocketed him to this version of fame. What I did not know was that he had prostate cancer that hit kind of right as he was at the like peak of his career. And yeah, this documentary does a really good job of going through his story. There's a lot of really great archival footage because he's just kept like a very pristine and organized archive of all of his stuff from all the various versions of the Tom Green show. And there's some really great interviews like with all of his past collaborators, all of his family. What I didn't like about it was it very much felt like, this contemporary documentary where there are like these structural conceits to it that are like really predictable beats, or there's like this sense of what is like so unimportant to the story, but that is really emphasized in the documentary is the fact that he just bought this ranch back like home in Canada, and he's like moving out of LA, and they turn it into this whole conceit of like, yeah, I'm like leaving show business behind to like move in to this ranch and live my ranch lifestyle. And it feels really disingenuous. It definitely feels like, maybe like a studio decision to be like, oh, you could frame it this way. Like, people love to see when somebody leaves Hollywood or, whatever. And there's a lot of, like, drone footage and stuff that I really didn't like. But, the story is really good. And I think that for, like, a mainstream kind of documentary, I think that is always the most powerful thing. It doesn't necessarily matter if it feels trite or like I've seen every shot before. As long as the story's good, I'll enjoy it. I think that also what it made me realize was how much Tom Green has really had like a major influence on contemporary comedy. There's like one interview, it wasn't a new interview done for the doc, but there's an interview that they show with Eric Andre where he's saying like, oh yeah, I stole my whole shit from the Tom Green show. And yeah, you really see it. If you are a fan of contemporary alternative comedy and you're not that familiar with Tom Green, this is a great documentary to kind of introduce you to him and why you should know him in relation to other comedy things. It was a really good story, and I would recommend it if you're a fan of like, alt comedy stuff. Yeah, so that's all the movies, but we have also been watching a lot of TV. We've been working our way through Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which is like my first Star Trek show that I've watched all the way through. But we've also been watching 30 Rock, and I had this conversation with my friend a couple days ago, but she asked, I had said like, oh, we're watching a lot of 30 Rock, and she was like, oh, I feel like it's too cringy for me to watch anymore, and like that it aged like milk. And I totally, see where that's coming from, but I feel like it's aged really well. I feel like they kind of understood something about what was happening in culture at the time. Like 2005, we're only in season, I think 3 right now. We've kind of binged through a lot of it, but I believe the show started in like 2004, and where we're at in the show right now, it's like 2007, 2008. And yeah, I guess it's kind of relieving to feel like some of the patterns and things that we're seeing in contemporary culture right now have been going on for many years, and that we're not necessarily in a uniquely bleak time in American history. I think we still are. There's a lot that's unique about the bleakness of our current world. It gives me hope that there'll be, like, you know, people who can make really good comedy about the cultural moment that we're living through. And also, I think it's so easy to feel really, really hopeless in tough political and cultural times, but I would really like to believe that, you know, it's just part of a cycle, and things are going to be bad, but that doesn't mean that they will never be good again. And yeah, I think the best part about living through, like, difficult times, however you want to slice it, is there's usually really good culture that comes out of that. Is that a lame thing to say? Maybe, but I like to believe it, especially as somebody who enjoys a lot of media and culture and art. I think if everything was great all the time, we would never get great art, so yikes. So I think something that I talked about in my Substack a lot last year was I had this kind of sense of not really listening to music and not really enjoying music like I used to, and I'm very happy to say that I am out of that now. I feel like I've been listening to a ton of music, a ton of new music, a lot of old music too, but just, yeah, so much good stuff. So I want to talk about 3 albums that I've had on repeat in the past couple weeks of the year. Number 1 is Ja Won't Pay the Bills by Sublime. This is, like, it's not technically their first album, but it's like a compilation of demos and some more completed songs, some live stuff from, like, really early in their career, and it's so good. I think Sublime is one of my favorite bands. I think that I like any band that feels like they just so transcend genre. Sublime just does such a great job of wearing their influences on their sleeve while making something totally new out of it. Like, you know, you can always see what their influences are, but every Sublime song feels like a Sublime song. Even, like, their cover of Hope by the Descendants, or, you know, something like KRS-One. Yeah, all of their songs feel so unique to them, and I think it's amazing that they already had that going for them so early in the career, as you can see on Ja Won't Pay the Bills. This has been my go-to Friday afternoon album, when I just need to feel like, oh yeah, work week's over, time to just hang out, maybe light a joint. Yeah, I think it's just a perfect hang out, have a good time kind of album. It's a decent enough thing to put on in the background. I put it on in the background when we had some friends over last weekend, and then you can also sit and very actively listen to it, and it'll be a great listen. But yeah, that album has kind of always been something that I cycle back to, but I just really have had it on repeat a lot this past month or so. Another album that I've had on repeat a lot has been Vince and Bola, which is a live album with Vince Guaraldi and Bola Sete. This is a great kind of bossa-y jazz album. Like, over the past year, I've realized that listening to, like, a, you know, really kind of cool jazz has been really helpful for getting me, like, into a workflow. When I get to my desk at work, I'll usually put on, like, one of these Snoopy jazz kind of playlists. I'll link one below, because it's just great to, like, have on in the background and work to. For me, if I don't have, like, something kind of playing in my ears, it's really easy to get kind of distracted by everything around me and not really, like, get to focus on something. And yeah, I've just noticed that like having some sort of cool jazz in the background is helpful. And so I got really into just like Vince Guaraldi as like an artist last year because I was listening to so many of these silly like Snoopy jazz things, and I was like, oh, I could just go to the source. I could go to Vince Guaraldi. Like, I know that I like his kind of version of jazz for this specific thing. So I've kind of just been listening to like every album that I can find of his. And yeah, this one is kind of more like upbeat and fun. It's not necessarily a super like working jazz album for me. It's a little bit more of like I would say this is like a Saturday morning jazz, like something that I like to put on while we're just like drinking coffee, or I'm just, hanging out at home, having a good time, but kind of trying to get into like a little bit of a more energized feeling, but not necessarily working. Having a good time, not working. Yeah. I love Vince Guaraldi so much, and I could talk about any one of his albums, but this is the one that I've been heavily playing over the past couple weeks. The next album that I'm super excited to talk about is Waiting Room by Catherine Mower. This artist is local to the Bay Area, so that makes me even more excited to shout them out and talk about it. Yeah, this record is a really interesting mix of kind of alternative rock and kind of noise sound art stuff, but like one thing that I really, really enjoyed about it was there are these moments where the vocals really remind me of Under My Skin by Avril Lavigne, which was one of the first albums I ever owned and knew every lyric to. And I think, while I'm not gonna say that it's like one of the best albums of all time, I do think that there is something really unique about its sound, and especially about the vocal quality on that album. And there's something about Waiting Room that hits like that same part of my brain, and it's really, really good. Very interesting music, such like definitely like an active listen kind of album. I wouldn't necessarily say it's great for putting on in the background of anything, but if you have some time, especially on like a rainy day or a wintry day, depending on where you are, this is such a great record to like really, really lose yourself in. Yeah, just like so many layers, so many different sounds going on, and no two songs on the album are alike. It's just such a varied and amazing listen. Alright, and the last thing that I want to talk about for music is this Dead Milkman bootleg from 1985. I just kind of at the end of last year found out that Joe Jack Talcum of the Dead Milkmen does a newsletter, like an email newsletter about, I would say like maybe about once a month is how often they come out. It's really just him saying like, hey, here are some shows that I'm playing, and yeah, just like general updates. I wish that more artists would do this, especially like older artists. It's just so convenient to have like they themselves write this little newsletter. It's like, this is what I'm up to, here's how you can show up, here's what you can show up for. Yeah, and as part of that newsletter, he sends out bootlegs every now and again, and I think this was like last month he sent this one out. It was a bootleg from 1985, right before their album Big Lizard in My Backyard came out, and it's like the full show. There's like one little moment where there's like a tape being switched and it kind of misses a couple seconds of a song, but other than that, it's the full show and it's amazing. The sound quality is also really good. I kind of expected it to sound not so great because it's just like a random person's bootleg from the 80s, but it sounds really good. If you're a big Dead Milkman fan, this is such a fun listen. Like, so cool to have this stuff and to be able to like just find it on the internet. Yeah, I think it's a big deal, and it makes me happy that the internet exists. which I don't always feel that way. Yeah, it's only 32 minutes too, so this is a great one to just like put on and hang out, do whatever too. I think when I listened to it the first time, I just kind of sat and knit while listening to it, and it was great. And yeah, I highly, highly recommend if you're a fan of like, well, the Dead Milkman, obviously, and if you're at all a fan of like DIY punk, any kind of DIY punk, like Dead Milkmen are so central to that. So yeah, go crazy. And the last category is just kind of etc. other stuff. So for this chunk of the year, I want to talk about the filming that I just did for my friend's recording studio. I believe it was like last year, within the last 2 years, he's been working to build out this recording studio in Crockett, California. It's called Babazuki's Studio. He put so much work into this place, and it's been so awesome to see it all come to fruition, to see people start making albums there, and just kind of as part of, you know, like a community building thing, a following building thing. We've been working on these live recorded videos there with some bands that we've invited, or I should say he invited. He does all the legwork there. But yeah, like me and my partner and some of our friends, like we've gone and helped out with the filming, and it has been just so much fun. It has been so cool to see them like come together into like real ass videos. The one that we just finished recording this week has an artist that I never would have dreamed of working with, and it was so fun and exciting to get to meet her and hear her voice live in person, like 2 feet away from her. And yeah, I'm really excited for those to come out. He's currently still editing the videos, but I think season 2 is going to be dropping pretty soon. And I'll leave a link below to at least one of the videos from season 1, because those were also very, very good. But we've definitely stepped up the production value for this round, and I think it shows. Yeah, I'm really excited about this, and I can't wait for you guys to see it. The only other thing that I have on my list is these Big Bud Press square neck tanks. I've been a Big Bud Press person for a very long time, and I think one thing that I know about them is if you love a particular style of product, they will probably stop selling it very soon. And yeah, for their most recent sample sale, I just like knew that these square neck tanks were gonna go away. So I grabbed a couple of them because I think that they're very, very flattering on me, and I always feel like I don't have enough like summery clothing. I've been trying to kind of remedy that, but yeah, whenever we go, like we'll go back home for me, which is LA, in any season, but especially in the summer, it's just like, oh, holy shit, I like don't have clothes for this anymore. And then we'll go back to my partner's home, which is the Boston area, and man, it is so hard to exist in that humidity for me, in that like hot humidity. So every summer I'm always like, oh my god, I don't have the wardrobe for this. But yeah, now I have a bunch of tank tops. Really happy about that. Really happy that they are flattering on me, and I'm glad I got them for a big discount before they potentially go away forever. Yeah. Oh, and then one more thing that I want to talk about are these earrings that I'm wearing. They are just like super simple, chunky hoops. I was just looking for like a nice chunky hoop. Yeah, I got these at Needles and Pens in San Francisco. I will find out what the brand was, and I will put that in the description as well. But yeah, I think one of my goals for this year is to mostly only buy clothing, accessories, anything that I'm gonna like wear or use on my body in person. And that's because I'm so sick of ordering stuff online and having it not fit. I'm sick of like ordering a pair of earrings online and then getting them and feeling like they're horrible quality. So I just want to, like, put my hands on stuff before I buy it. And yeah, I found these earrings at Needles and Pens when I was doing Christmas shopping for other people, but I, yeah, just like put my hands on them and I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. That's what I'm looking for. The price was very, very reasonable. Yeah, I feel like I'm at this weird point in my life where I don't want to be buying like costumey feeling super cheap jewelry, but I also cannot afford like real solid gold jewelry. So I'm in like a medium kind of place when it comes to jewelry quality, but I think that at least just like being able to get my hands on stuff and like buy it in person, I think that that'll help. But yeah, I think that's everything for this chunk of the season. I will definitely come back and do this again, probably at the end of March, or whenever it is that winter ends at the end of March, so I'll do a second half of winter catch up. And yeah, I'm gonna go finish my tea and hang out with my cat and probably listen to one of the same 3 albums I've been listening to and knit. Alright, bye.